2020 budget recap. Here we go. So I like to say you guys did awesome. Here, if you saw the email that I sent out yesterday, you already saw this chart, but this is the month-by-month giving in all the different areas, and you guys did amazing. It doesn't look as even as it might have had we been in the church and the offerings were getting counted every week, but rest assured, we counted it. We cashed your check, and here's the giving that was done this year. The next is what was the actual giving versus what was expected to, or what was budgeted to come in. So contributions, 105,000 was what was actually given versus 100 that was budgeted. Missions giving 670, local outreach 213, and nothing was budgeted for those. And capital investment 3,455, and nothing was budgeted for that. So at the end of the year, total donations tallied 109,446, and only 100,000 was budgeted. So thank you, Lakeview, for your generosity. Our other areas of income were Church of the Americas participation. We had taken what we had done the year before of 18,000 was budgeted, and then COVID hit, and COVID affected their congregation more deeply than it did ours. So by the end of the year, we received 6,750 from Church of the Americas. But it did open up opportunities for us to rent out the facility to Open Home Church and Roots Church. And so we received $2,400 and $400 and 1 penny from facilities rental. That 1 penny is from when Roots Church wanted to do direct deposit, and they did 1 penny to make sure it went to the right account, and then no interest earned. And so other income, 9,150 at the end of the year, 18,000 was budgeted, which leaves us with a grand total after the denomination participation. We gave $12,481 in denominational participation. We budgeted $12,000, so $106,115 of total income, and $106 was budgeted. So we were pretty on target on our budget overall, even though the Church of the Americas was under budget. Through giving in other areas, it helped meet our budget. So that's on the income side. On the expense side, local outreach, 5,000 was budgeted, only 233 was spent. Missionary support, only nothing was budgeted, 935 was spent. A big chunk of that was for the mission trip for Laura. Personnel, 38,340 was budgeted. 42,872 was spent. The big difference there is some honorarium checks that were given in December or earlier in 2019, but then the checks weren't cashed until 2020. And so in our software, it looks like we were over budget, but it was really it was about $3,000. So still over budget a little bit, but by not as much as it appears here. And then ministries, $1,000 was budgeted in each of these categories: children, adult, music, and worship. Under budget, nothing was spent on children's, 112 in adults, and 1,300 for music and worship. A lot of subscriptions and different things that were budgeted are in that category. Operations, administration, 19,000 was spent, 11,700 was budgeted. Utilities, 18,000 spent, 21,000 budgeted. Facilities, 7,200 spent, 11,000 budgeted. Parsonage utilities, 5,900 spent, 2,500 budgeted. Property tax, 6,675 spent, 6,200 budgeted, and insurance was right on the nose, 6,490. Insurance companies are really good at telling us exactly how much they're going to charge us, so we budgeted really well for that. So that gave us a total operations of $63,545 with 58,000 budgeted, so over budget there. But if we take it overall, total expenses was 109,000. Total income was 106,000. That is a net loss of 2,900 $908. And like I said, some of that was honorariums that were given the previous year that were cashed in 2020. And so I think we were right on budget, or actually under budget, if we count for that. Any questions on any of that? I'll give you time to unmute yourselves if you want. If not, we can go right along. Anybody? All right. 2021 budget. Here's what we have budgeted, and I'll point out some things as we go here. Contributions income, we're going to keep it at the 100,000, and hopefully we exceed that like we did this year. Missions giving, as Deborah mentioned, we are believing God that through this congregation, we will give above and beyond our normal giving, $6,000 this year, and that is $500 a month. And so I am expecting and praying that God will speak to your hearts about what you can do to contribute towards that goal. Deborah has already pledged $100 a month. So that gives us, that's 20% of our goal. So kudos to Deb. And some of you can match that. Some of you can give more than that. And some of you can give less than that. But it's not about the actual dollar amount. As we learn from the parable of the widow's mite, it's about our heart. Like, is your heart into giving towards missions and seeing God's kingdom expanded around the world? And I would let you talk to Jesus about that. So this line item right here, capital investment, 10,000. It's not that we're going to ask you to give an additional 10,000 above to do any repairs here. What this is Lakeview through the generations past has built up a large reserve fund. And in this time where our congregation is smaller, in order to do some of the ministry things that we would like to do, I am proposing that we take $10,000 out of reserves and bring it into the operating budget. So then there's more money freed up for ministry type things. And so that's what this capital investment is taking money out of reserves, putting it into the operating budget. So with all of that, the total income would be $116,000 this year budgeted. Other income, for Church of the Americas participation, I budgeted $9,000, which is half of what we had budgeted last year, simply because we don't know how COVID is going to continue impacting their congregation. I don't think it's their intention to not give us what we had agreed upon before, but I'm going to be in communication with Pastor Jorge and Pastor Emily and see what their needs are and what they can do. But for our budget reasons, I'm only expecting $9,000 to come in from Church of the Americas. Church facilities, expecting $2,500 to come in between now and the end of the year as we use the facility, rent it out either for other congregations or other events to make up some of our budget. So $11,500 budgeted for 2021 on the income. From that, denomination participation will be $10,850. So for those that are new to the FMC, we pay, quote unquote, a denominational participation. Some might call it a tithe on the income that we receive to the church goes towards the denomination for support and for being part and for the staff that the denomination employs. And that is done on all income minus the 10,000 that we bring over from reserves. We don't give the denomination or the tithe on that portion because previous generations already did that. We don't give on the portion of the funds that we get from Church of the Americas because they are also a Free Methodist congregation. And so they are already tithing or giving their denominational participation from that income. So we don't have to do that. So this is the 10% that we give on our donations and any other income that we get from facilities use. So just an explanation there on what that goes towards. That leaves 116,650 for total income when we account for that. All right. So on the expenses side, local outreach, budgeting 6,000. Some of that will go towards, we want to do the sock drive again. We want to continue to partner with Sacagawea in toilet paper and rice and beans if they need that again. We want to do other outreaches with Alpha. The first one, I want to do 3 Alpha sessions this year, one this spring, one in the summer, one in the fall. If we are able to, for the summer and fall, it'll be in person. And so there's expenses that go with that. Usually at Alpha, they serve a meal. And so we'll either have expenses towards buying food to prepare a meal or cater a meal. There's a weekend away that we don't want to inconvenience the guests. And so funds will be used for a weekend away. And so that's what the local outreach budget will be used for. Missionary support, as Deborah mentioned, we want to partner with Eric Spangler for him and his wife as they are directors in Asia, but we also want to help them plant churches. Isn't that amazing that for $150 a month, we can plant a new church in Asia? And he said they already have church planters lined up. And so we want to be a part of that. So 6,000 that we are expecting from your generous giving, and then $633 in addition to that from the general budget going into that. Personnel, this includes my salary, general staff salary. If you heard Deborah mention, the board approved her to be office admin, and they are paying her a small stipend every month. And so she's getting paid out of that, as well as payroll taxes, honorariums, and those sort of things. So that budgeted is $45,562. Ministries, children, we are budgeting 600 a month. Adults or small groups, 600 a month. Youth and college, 1,200. I'd like to see that grow. I'd like us to start reaching out to students at the UW campus and seeing how we can partner with ministries that are there and reaching out there. Music and worship, 2,105. Weekend services is a new category. And this will be any expenses that have to deal with our weekend experiences. Right now, it's very minimal with Zoom, but hopefully as we come into the building, there are things that we can do to, like the campfire and cocoa that we did. Buying the cocoa will come out of this budget. If there's a sermon illustration that we need to buy something for, it'll come out of this budget. And anything else that we want to do to improve our weekend experience will come out of that budget. And hospitality, this will be anything that we do in order to foster hospitality. We want to have some block parties here for the neighbors, and we want to encourage small groups to get together and maybe once a month have a party for birthdays or something like that. And I want us to be hospitable and pay for budgets pay for expenses out of that. And so that's the hospitality budget. Operations, 9,000, or administration will be 9,000. Utilities, 17,500. Facilities, 4,500. Parsonage utilities, 5660. Property taxes, 6,700, and insurance, 6,500. The only other note I want to make out of here from this budget is in administration, it's lower than it was last year because we have thanked and let go of David Bruce's services as a bookkeeper. It's not necessarily for anything that he did wrong, but more because as we were looking at our expenses and where we could save money, but also after talking with the conference, they were looking at, we need to have some separation of duties in terms of our finances. And so he was previously on the bank as a signer. He had the ability to sign checks and he was doing the bookkeeping. And they're like, you need to separate those duties so that it's not that we didn't trust David Bruce, but like that's the way churches get in trouble when they trust too much and people find it too easy. And so right now, the way things work here, Mar has a team that comes and counts the offerings. So they are handling the input of donations. From there, Deborah inputs the bills and any other accounts receivable, such as the funds we get from Open Home Church, from Church of the Americas, from Roots Church. And then she also inputs the bills into our accounting software. And then we also changed the signers on the account. Currently, Sharon and Kevin Lauder are the two signers on our church accounts. And so if there's any checks that need to be written, then they are the signers. And so, you have a separation from the people bringing in the money, separation of the person that is inputting the information, and then there's separate people that are then signing. So kind of a three-way check of like, how's it coming in and where's it getting spent? So then that's not falling all on one person. So that is the expenses there. And let me share my screen again. Total expenses, $116,650, and total income, $116,650. So it nets out to zero. Balance sheet on January 1st, 2020 was checking $45,146. Our reserve account had $98,155. The balance sheet for the January 1st, 2021, $37,201 in checking and $98,155. In addition to these two accounts, the church also has two Free Methodist Foundation accounts. These are accounts where people previously had given either as an estate, a bequest, and so we have actually two people that have done that at different times. So now there's 11,978 in one account, 45,763 in the other, for a total of 57,742 in those foundational accounts. And those are just like your Roth account or your 403C or 401BC. I forget all the letters, but they are accruing interest and gaining money just like any of your investments would. Q&A, questions. What questions do you have? I'd love to answer them to the best of my ability.
So you talked about moving $10,000 from the reserve account. I just wanted to know if the board has heard that previously, and do they agree?
Yeah, so this budget was proposed to the board in December, and then we discussed it in two different meetings. And so this budget has been approved as it is here for 2021. My thought is that we have that approval and we have that in mind, but that we don't necessarily transfer it over today or in January. We look how things are progressing towards the year as the year goes on. If we don't need to transfer it, then great. But if we do, then we don't feel bad about it or feel like we made a mistake. We already budgeted for this.
Look at it more like an allowance.
Right.
A buffer.
Yes.
Is Kevin back on yet?
No, he logged off, so it might have kicked him out.
Abe, can you remind us, we were raising money for some parsonage projects there at the end of the year of 2020. We came up short of that, I think, with $6,000. So how are we funding that? What's going on?
Yeah, so in discussion with the board as well, that was discussed in October or November. I can't remember the exact date. The thought was, initially my thought was like, hey, Kevin was writing up all the proposal of how much it was going to cost. Was going to be about $10,000 to $12,000 for that. We kind of discussed, well, let's just take that from the reserves. I forget who it was exactly who piped up and said, well, why don't we bring it to the congregation and see if they would like to give towards those expenses specifically. And I said, sure, I would love to do that. Let's do it a little bit more targeted instead of just an open, hey, we need another $10,000 to $12,000. So I picked the two biggest things, the water heater and the heat pump, which were about $6,000. At the end of the year, that came up, giving was $3,455 for those purposes. But again, as the board had discussed, we were going to present it to the congregation If they were able to meet that, great. But we had already approved the reserve covering whatever expenses weren't brought over by or weren't given by the congregation.
Okay, thank you.
So the work is still going to be completed. It's just not all covered by the congregation at this time. But that's okay. Like we said, it's kind of an allowance. It's there in case we need it. But we did want to give people an opportunity to give specifically towards that instead of just taking it out all at once. Any other questions?
I have a clarification.
Okay.
I just want to let you guys know what's going on with the mission giving for Alora's missions trip.
Yeah.
They continue to set that aside in an account specifically for each student up until I think in January, until they decided whether or not they were doing more missions trips and whether or not they would actually be doing another trip in the summer. And what they've decided is that they won't be doing any international missions trips this summer. So those funds have been put into a general missions fund at Trinity Western University for students who would go on missions trips anytime in the future, which may or may not include Alora. So it's still being used for mission work. It just may not be Alora doing it.
Okay. Thank you for that update.
Casualty of COVID.
Casualty of COVID.